Good morning. My name's Steve Nelson. I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Indiana. I had a story I wanted to tell you about Notre Dame. When I was a kid, I grew up in Meridian Kessler, a neighborhood on the north side of Indianapolis, and it's a predominantly Catholic neighborhood. And there's a Catholic school across the street from my grade school. And we had pictures in the newspaper of the nuns dressing up to go up to South Bend for the Notre Dame football game, and they wore their shirts and ties to school and their little uniforms. And my house was actually made out of Irish brick, which my dad hated, and he wanted to paint. So I grew up in that world, and I just was never a Notre Dame fan. I mean, you got to be kidding me. And I went on to Purdue, and was a Boilermaker, and definitely not pro Notre Dame. And my father-in-law was a big Notre Dame fan, and we used to debate and tell jokes back and forth between the Boilers and the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame. Well, yesterday I was down in Indianapolis for the afternoon. I had some errands to run, and I'm a teach down there, which you'll hear more about. I'm on the faculty at the Kelley School of Business, and I had a couple hours before class began. So I decided to go over to the Indiana History Museum. They have a display on the Interurban Railroad, and I'll talk more about that. So the Interurban Railroad in Indiana was the largest interurban railroad in the United States, and 2 million people a year would ride the interurban, some to school, places like that. You could go anywhere between any city in Indiana on the interurban. It's crazy. So I wanted to see that exhibit, and I did. And while I was there, I learned some more about Cole Porter. That's a beautiful exhibit. They've got a young lady in there that will sing you your favorite Cole Porter song. And there's a songstress in there every hour that the museum's open. I find that incredible. And then down the hall was an exhibit called Resist. I mean, what was that about? And so I thought I'd go check that out. And it talked about events in Indiana when people would get up in arms, so to speak, against bad things. And one of the exhibits that was highlighted was an event that occurred in South Bend, Indiana, in 1924. So a little bit of background. If you go back to the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan was pretty big in Indiana, and we kind of think today that it was all uneducated rural people, and it wasn't. The Ku Klux Klan was made up of Protestants, basically, well-heeled, well-educated, trying to protect their way of life. I mean, that was their thinking, and they wore robes and stuff, so you didn't know who they were because they were people in the community that everybody knew. So they wore robes, and they would go protest and burn crosses and do terrible things. And so the Ku Klux Klan, at that time in the 1920s, we didn't have a big African American population in Indiana, but we did have Jewish people and we did have Irish people, and they were against them, that's for sure. And they wanted them to not be successful and not be here, basically. So the Ku Klux Klan planned a big rally in South Bend, Indiana. It was going to be a weekend thing. They were going to do a couple of parades, have a big picnic, all this kind of cool stuff. And they had planned this event. And a lot of people in South Bend, which is pretty much a very big Catholic area as well, were not big fans of this. And the sheriff up in South Bend denied them a permit to get together and do this, and they didn't care. So the Ku Klux Klan basically assembled on Saturday morning in April. I think it was the 24th, 1924, or maybe the 19th or the 18th. But anyway, a Saturday in April, they assembled and started their parade. And they were met by about 500 students from Notre Dame who poured out of campus and basically destroyed the parade. I mean, they drove the Klansmen out of downtown South Bend, and there was a lot of hitting and banging, and some white outfits were stolen by the students. Hard to believe. It's amazing nobody was killed. There's a report. There was one report of a guy, a Klansman, pulling out a pistol and threatening some students, but he didn't fire, so that was good. And I found out later that the Klansmen had a third floor office on a corner in downtown South Bend. They had a big window there, and in the big window they had a cross with light bulbs, red light bulbs, a red cross, like a burning cross, and displayed in this window. And fortunately for the students, there was a produce seller on the first floor of that building. So the students grabbed potatoes out of barrels that were there and started throwing them at the window. And they broke the windows at the front of the Ku Klux Klan office, and they knocked out all the light bulbs except the top one. The top red one, they couldn't break it. They couldn't get a potato that high. And lo and behold, if the quarterback from the Notre Dame football team didn't show up, and he grabbed some potatoes and he started heaving it, and he knocked that last light bulb out. And the students were very happy about that. And so they retreated back to campus after this massive event. The Klansmen got reorganized. They were going to go back into town, and they were met by rain. All of a sudden, the town of South Bend was covered in a thunderstorm. And God works his way, right? And drove the Klansmen off a second time. And the picnic was ruined, and that was the end of that. The next day, the newspaper had an article about this event, and the newspaper writer referred to the students from Notre Dame as the Fighting Irish. That's where that came from. So the Fighting Irish label for Notre Dame has nothing to do with football or any athletic event. It has to do with the students at Notre Dame rising up to stop tyranny, bigotry that was occurring in South Bend, Indiana. And they became known from that as the Fighting Irish. It took a few years before the university finally acknowledged that label. It wasn't officially approved as the name, the tagline for Notre Dame University. It wasn't until 1927 that the president finally agreed to that. But everybody knew what it was about. So whenever we see a Fighting Irish logo, you know, the little leprechaun with his fists up, it's in memory of those students that went into South Bend to stop the Ku Klux Klan. And I forever will feel differently about Notre Dame University. Thanks for watching.